today marks 300 days until the midterms and 5 years since the January 6th attack on our nation's capital. We're going to have much more on that coming up in just a bit. But tomorrow morning, members of Donald Trump's team will brief the full Senate and House on the situation in Venezuela. That means it is the first time most members of Congress will be briefed, and it has been more than 4 days after the attack. And remember, the president says he tipped off American oil companies before and after the strikes. Congress, not so much. Today, Trump spoke to House Republicans and made it clear he is very happy with how it's all gone so far.
You know, people are saying it goes down with one of the most incredible. It was so complex. 152 airplanes, many. Talk about boots on the ground. We had a lot of boots on the ground. But it was amazing. And think of it, nobody was killed. And on the other side, a lot of people were killed. Unfortunately, I say that, soldiers. Cubans, mostly Cubans, but many killed. They've been after this guy for years and years and years. And, he's a violent guy. He gets up there and he tries to imitate my dance a little bit. But he's a violent guy. And he's killed millions of people. I'm also meeting with oil companies. Let's go. You know what that's about. We've got a lot of oil to drill, which is going to bring down oil prices even further.
And tonight, the president posted on social media that Venezuelan authorities agreed to turn over between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil. The president says the oil will be sold at market price and that he, the president of the United States, is going to control that money. A reminder, the Constitution is pretty clear that Congress holds the power to spend money, not the president. Meanwhile, the people who actually live in Venezuela are very worried about its economy. The New York Times reports the country's internal projections show that the American blockade on oil could affect more than 70% of oil production. People briefed on the projections told the Times that would wipe out its main source of public revenue. And remember, that country is already struggling. Remember, just yesterday, Stephen Miller said that Venezuela needs America's permission to even have an economy to begin with. In that very same interview, Miller seemed to suggest the U.S. is entitled to Greenland. And today, the White House confirmed it is considering using the military to obtain it. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said in a statement the following: President Trump has made it well known that acquiring Greenland is a national security priority of the United States. The president and his team are discussing a range of options to pursue this important policy goal. And of course, utilizing the U.S. military is always an option. But this evening, we learned that Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers that Trump actually wants to purchase Greenland and is using public statements to try to pressure Denmark into a deal. That is what two people familiar told MS Now, confirming a report from the Wall Street Journal. Greenland, of course, is a self-governing territory of Denmark. Today, European leaders issued a joint statement pushing back against the president's threats, saying Greenland belongs to its own people. All right, we got a lot to cover, so let's get smarter with the help of our lead-off panel. They are here tonight. Jeff Mason, White House correspondent for Reuters. My dear friend Leanne Caldwell, chief Washington correspondent for Puck. And Michael McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia and an MS Now international affairs analyst. Mr. Mason, you spend the most time at the White House, so help us. The White House is now openly weighing using our military to take Greenland. But now you got Rubio reportedly telling Congress, no. The president just wants to buy it. This is all just like a public negotiating tactic. What can you tell us?
What I can tell you, number one, Steph, is that all of this is real, that the president, the White House, and his officials are absolutely discussing these options. I spoke to a senior administration official earlier today who told me and a couple colleagues that there are active discussions, that this is a popular issue right now within the walls of the White House to discuss. But also was told that a sale or a purchase, I should say, of Greenland is something that they're considering. And this official said that they will try diplomacy first, and that's what they'll be leading with. But the discussion of the military and the statement that you just read, all of that is real, and all of these things it's not hyperbole. It's something that is actually being discussed within the West Wing.
What are you hearing about this on the Hill, Leanne?
Well, it depends on who you ask, obviously. House Speaker Mike Johnson seemed to tout the president's line today, saying that Greenland is a national security interest of the United States. We all know that Speaker Johnson doesn't separate himself from the president really ever. So that was pretty expected. But this is making a lot of members really uneasy, not just Democrats, but Republicans too. The fact that this is an ally, Denmark is an ally, Denmark is a NATO member of NATO, and that this could be a threat to the entire organization of NATO. So there are a lot of questions that a lot of members have. They are very much looking forward to this briefing tomorrow with top administration officials to learn more. But it is just really, really incredible that essentially colonization is the policy of the United States right now, Steph.
Ambassador, I just want to slow down what Leanne said and underline it again. Okay, if the United States takes Greenland by force, would that not be one NATO country going after another? And if that takes place, wouldn't that be the end of the NATO alliance? That feels monumental to me.
I can't stress enough how completely insane this idea is on so many levels. First of all, there is no national security interest that we need to seize Greenland. They have not made the case. We can have as many soldiers there as we want. We have bases there. I worked in the government. I know how we've used Greenland before. We can do that through negotiation. Second, they roll out minerals. We can sign treaties. We can sign agreements, contracts to get minerals. There is no reason to go back to 19th century imperialism. But third, to your point, Stephanie, not only would it blow up NATO, it would alienate the United States from the entire world, from the democratic world, the free world, the autocratic world. And then we will empower countries like China. Well, if they can take Greenland, of course we can take Taiwan. Putin, well, there's no difference. We're just like them. I just think this is so insane, and we need to call it out as insane.
Why would the United States want to do this, Ambassador?
But it just is the craziest
First
idea
of all,
I've
I'm
ever heard
dying
of.
to know. Poor Leanne right now is dying because someone in her house is talking to her and she's saying, yo, I'm on television. I absolutely love when that happens.
My
Michael, why would
10-year-old
we
daughter
want to...
who should be asleep.
Why? Girl, that's happened to me. Why would America want to do this? Why would the president? I shouldn't say America. It's the president. Why does Trump want to do this? Like, I can see in your face, I can hear your words. This is the most insane thing ever. So why does he want to do it?
I think it's about Trump. This is about his legacy. It's just like building the ballroom that nobody asked for. He wants to be the guy that said, I'm the person that brought Greenland. He thinks of it as his personal project. And if there was an interagency process and they sent out, and it was in the national security strategy, the Chinese and the Russians are trying to take over Greenland, we need to do something about that. But they're just inventing all these alibis post facto. By the way, if you read the national security strategy, they told us in that document that the Chinese and Russians are not our enemies. Yet today, they're now our enemies. But again, I just think it's about Trump, and it's a vanity project, just like the ballroom. And it's time for people, rational people, including the people that work for him that I used to know. They know this is insane too. And we have to stop this, because this is not just about Greenland. It is not just about Denmark. It is about overreach that I think would have dire consequences for America's place in the world moving forward.
Then let's talk about Venezuela, Jeff. And I'm not saying that the president is lying about this, but he's certainly been known to overstate a whole lot of things. And this was a very big announcement that he's basically saying, yep, Venezuela is going to be forking over oil to us and he'll control the money. We've not heard any of this from Venezuela. What can you tell us?
The first thing that I can tell you, Steph, is yes, I mean, all of us as journalists and viewers have to sometimes put a filter through which we listen to some of the things that the president says. And I will give an example of that. When he was speaking at his press conference from Mar-a-Lago about Venezuela last Saturday, one of the things that he said was that the new government would be cooperating, and if not, then he threatened essentially another strike. I referenced that I spoke to a senior administration official earlier today, and we talked a little bit about the current leader in Venezuela, who essentially succeeded Maduro, although she has still said that Maduro is in charge. She has made clear in her public statements that she still is part of the Maduro government, and I cited that with this official, and she said, well, Delcy has to speak to a domestic audience. We understand that the conversations with us, i.e. with the U.S. administration, are different. So that's interesting. It does sort of put into perspective what the president is saying and what others around him are saying. That doesn't mean, again, I think that filter is still important. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't still continue to question whether or not what he's saying and what they're saying about talks with the people in Venezuela right now conform with what people in Venezuela are saying or experiencing. But it is a little bit of an insight into the idea that maybe there are public and private conversations that are different.